Not all position groups are created equal. That is unfortunately how it goes. Not every position group for Michigan football will be as good as the others, but this is a pretty deep team, of course. So we are going to get into my final, I haven't even written about this yet, my final position group rankings for this 2023 Michigan football team coming up on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Tuesday. We are back in doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I am your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. And we are going to, thankfully, I have a puppy checking in and out. She is not lost like she was briefly. But we're going to get to, I did this position group ranking here just before coming on. I intend on writing about it probably on Wednesday. To kind of share where I am most confident to actually we're going to do it this way, least confident to most confident position groups that I have. And the sad thing is there have been times where I have done this and the feeling was, man, I don't know that I have any confidence in this group. That's not the case this time. So it's going to come across as like, man, I am just poo-pooing all over this one group. Honestly, it's not that. So let's just get right into it. Let's start with my number 10. I didn't put special teams on here. That's just a big unknown in my eyes. I'm not going to do kick return, punt return, punting, kicking, all of that. But I have number 10 at wide receiver. Wide receiver was like 1 or 2 last year. I wonder if I bet you I could look up exactly this in my notes from this time last year and see where it was. It was right around there. I'm not seeing it here in my notes, so unfortunately, but I do know that it was up there. It was among the top that I had overall. It was 1 or 2 last year. Wide receiver, because I was like, this is just so deep of a position group. And it ended up being okay, right? It wasn't like an abysmal, what have you. It's just not as known right now. Now, granted, Cornelius Johnson, Rowan Wilson did a decent job in 2021. I think that should give them some credit. But in order for Michigan to do what it wants to do, it needs more than them. And we hear a lot about Tyler Morris. We hear a lot about Darius Clemens. We hear a lot about the 3 freshmen. Peyton O'Leary, I'm sure, is in that mix. I say that, but I'm not. I can't look at this group and say for sure, yeah, they're gonna get 3,000 plus yards. That they're just gonna do that. That's just what they're gonna do. I don't know, and not knowing is half the battle. As far as coming up with position groups, I didn't even watch G.I. Joe. I don't know why. I wasn't allowed to watch G.I. Joe growing up. So that's my number 10. Now, that said, I think Rowan Wilson, I've said time and time again, he's a diet Devontae Smith. I think he's got all of the tools to be an elite receiver. It's just a matter of it actually happening. So we will see if that does happen. Number 9, we will continue on here. I have cornerback, and it's not even the full cornerback position. It's just one half. Because obviously Will Johnson's got that on lock on the one side. I feel good about Will Johnson. I think Michigan probably feels pretty good about Josh Wallace, but not nearly to the degree it feels about Will Johnson. Michigan feels pretty good about, you can put him at corner, you can put him at safety, depending on how you look at the nickelback position. But Mikey Sainer still is another one that you feel pretty good about. But as I've said before, any unit is only as strong as its weakest link, right? So if Michigan trots out someone out there and it just ends up that they can't cover Big Ten receivers, that could be a problem. And we might not know exactly how good or not good the second corner, whoever ends up having that role, is until week 11. And we really might not know until week 13 against Ohio State. So that's my number 9. So, again, I'm not saying it's a bad position group. It's a very good position group. It's just it has something that we don't know. I think that both of those groups have players that we know a decent amount about. It's just we need to see a little bit more. Number 8, edge rushers. I did separate interior and exterior. And the thing with the edge rushers is it's also a we don't know, but it's not nearly, it doesn't feel as dire. It feels like we don't know, but we feel pretty good about it. I mean, there's 4 guys there, maybe 5. In Jalen Harrell, we know the most about, Braden McGregor, Derek Moore, Josiah Stewart, and TJ Guy would be the 5th one that I would discuss here as well. Jalen Harrell, I mean, he's stepping into that area where it's like if he gets better, then he can be an absolute game changer. He's had moments, because keep in mind, last year was just his first year of starting. He was just a guy that kind of came in, caused some havoc in 2021, and then went back out on the bench behind David Ojabo. But David Ojabo had supplanted Taylor Upshaw as it were. But he's the only one with any production, and we're not 100% sure if he's going to exceed what he's done so far. But I think there's a pretty good case that you can say, yes, Michigan loves Jalen Harrell. So I think that's probably a pretty good indication. Braden McGregor has just been biding his time and while getting over the mental hurdles of having had an ACL tear. But they speak of him very, very highly. And that makes me feel like that duo is going to be the primary duo and that they'll be pretty good. That said, that's a feeling, that's projection. We don't know for sure. But not knowing for sure is fine. We've had plenty of years covering Jim Harbaugh's Michigan, and edge rushers come up and like, oh, we don't know for sure, but I mean, it feels like this is probably going to be good. And it ends up being that way. It's been that way almost the entirety of his career in Ann Arbor. Behind them, Josiah Stewart is 2 years removed from 12.5 sacks, but doing so for Coastal Carolina. We'll see if he can do it in the Big Ten. Up to 247 pounds. Feels pretty good. You got Derek Moore, who's slimmed down. Entering second year, that feels like a potential breakout, and that wouldn't surprise me if he supplanted Braden McGregor, because I think he's got that kind of talent. And then TJ Guy is just a guy that's been around since 2020. Or 2021 rather. He's just kind of gotten out there here and there, but they said that they really like what he's done so far. So TJ Guy is one that I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up being a heck of a lot more in that rotation than people expect. So we have time for one more. Number 7 is tight end. Tight end is my 7th most confident position group. And this is where we're starting to get, we're talking nuance now with everything, because AJ Barner, Colston Loveland feels awesome. Max Bredesen, Matt Hibner, different levels of production, but we know that Colston Loveland, they're talking about him as like, oh, you guys talk about Brock Bowers, but wait until you see this guy. AJ Barner was spoken of by Tom Allen when he was at Indiana as being the likely best Indiana tight end in history. Didn't end up coming to fruition. Has everything Michigan wants. I think that they are going to have a lot of play, both in the pass game as well as in run blocking. I think it's an excellent group, and I'm excited to see where it goes. So, all right, we're going to get 6 through 4 coming up here in just one moment. Before we do, this episode of Locked On Wolverines is sponsored by Betterhelp. So there are plenty of times in life that you can't get things together. You could be going through some financial issues, could be going through your job, could be completely unrelated. You just don't feel right. You just don't feel like yourself. I've had multiple instances in my life where I have struggled, and that's no secret. I've had the occupation laden moments where I've hated myself, not in this job, but when I was in Hollywood, I've had moments where I doubted myself. I have moments where I don't feel like I'm good enough. Well, that's the type of thing that Betterhelp can help with, because sometimes in life we're faced with tough choices and a path forward isn't always clear, right? And for some, it might be, you just need that extra push. It might be you need a complete change completely whatsoever. You just need that complete change. So whether you're dealing with decisions around career, relationships, or anything else, therapy helps you stay connected to what you really want to navigate in life. And so they can help you move forward with confidence as well as excitement. Trusting yourself to make decisions that align with your values, just like anything, the more you practice it, the easier it gets. So there's a lot of things that a lot of people look at things like this with stigma, and you shouldn't, because we all need help from time to time. Certainly, again, I'm someone who has needed help from time to time. I've relied on my friends a lot for help quite often and come to them as an absolute disaster over any of the aforementioned as well as other things that have happened in life. But that's what Betterhelp can help you with, and they can do it in a much more effective way, in my opinion. Therapy is not something that you should look down on at all. It's something that you should embrace and you should get behind. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, why don't you give Betterhelp a try? It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnCollege today, and you can get $10 off of your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnCollege. All right, let's continue on with our position group ranking. Go 6 through 4, and then we'll go 3 to 1. So my number 6 for Michigan, 6th most confident group, defensive tackle. Again, I mean, a lot of these groups, it's funny that we've got a little bit of projection to this point, right? A little bit of projection, because we know what Chris Jenkins is. I thought in many ways he outplayed Mozzie Smith last year. He's expected to be better. He's up to 307-ish pounds, 310 pounds, something like that. Does not look like it. He looks like 250 pounds to me, right? Because he's just that svelte. He's that beastly. They call him the mutant for a reason. We know what Mason Graham is. And for freshman year Mason Graham, we don't know, you make your biggest jump year 1 to year 2. Same thing, Kenneth Grant, slimmed down 20 pounds, year 1 to year 2. Rayshon Benny finally starts kind of coming on, making sense of the whole game in the most important moment, Ohio State. So you have those 4, Cam Good as well, who they rave about. And then you're just starting to get into different names that of guys who are really starting to stand out. It's actually, it's such a deep group, it makes you wonder, how are they going to get everybody? Jim Harbaugh mentioned the 3 freshmen, Cameron Brandt, Trey Pierce. We've heard me talk about Trey Pierce a lot, Etta. And there's someone else I'm missing that one of the players discussed recently. I don't know, but we're looking at maybe 9 guys that could be in that rotation, right? I just mentioned 8. I know I'm missing one other guy that and it would be nice to see like an Ika Wanna come forward and do something, right? It'd be nice to see. Actually, he wasn't even was he on the roster? This is one of those things where I'm like, wait a second. Wait a second. I just want to check real quick. Football roster. Okay, yeah, he's still on there. I just didn't remember putting him on the list because I hand type the roster after it comes out. Yeah, he's still on there. So they've just got so many names there that are potentially ready to step up. Oh, Reese Atterbury was who I was going to say, because he was discussed by Kenneth Grant yesterday, and he's like, all he needs to do is figure out a couple of technical things, and he's good to go. I mean, it's as deep of a group as you really can be. It's very exciting to see that Michigan's kind of back in that 2016 level rotation potentially at defensive tackle, and it's. Yeah, you still want to get like those 5 stars, but if those 3 freshmen end up being as good, we're not even talking about all the freshmen. We're not even talking about Brooks Barr. We're not even talking about I don't know who else, but that might be it. But that's a great group. Number 5. Really, you're looking at one player. It's quarterback. if it was just JJ McCarthy and you had another JJ McCarthy, or let's say it was like next year and JJ was back and you have Jaden Davis as well, I mean, you feel even better about it. I know I think we had it number 3 at this time last year. I have it number 5 because we just don't know between Jack Tuttle or Davis Warren if JJ McCarthy goes down, can one of those two beat Ohio State, beat Penn State, all of that kind of stuff. I mean, you don't have to do a lot necessarily because you can rely on the run game and just make enough plays so that they don't stack up on the run game. But really, this is just JJ McCarthy. And if it was just JJ McCarthy, you'd be a lot higher. Now, that said, there's also Alex Orji, who I think we're going to see in some different roles, and I think he'll get involved. And then I'm not going to count out Kendrick Bell because, I mean, he's Ronnie Bell's little brother, and it just makes sense that if he comes in and it's just like he ends up being the best Michigan quarterback of all time, that just would not surprise me at all. But I do have quarterback a couple spots behind some other roles at number 5. Finishing out this segment here, we got linebacker at number 4, and what a meteoric rise, because I know that was the last 2 years running my number 10 position group, or number 9, depending on if I combine the interior and exterior tackles. Linebacker, it's just night and day. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they outplay even that ranking, because now suddenly you have a group of guys who you know are going to be good. That's kind of what's been missing for Michigan outside of Devin Bush, is having like an elite linebacking core, because usually it's just been, one guy that stand out, and, or just you have the front and the back kind of making up for the linebackers to some degree, not to impugn the linebackers throughout the years, but that's kind of what's kept Michigan from, I feel like, taking things to that next step. And when you've got Junior Colson, Mike Barrett, Ernest Hausman, Jimmy Rolder, and now apparently Jaden Hood. I mean, that's suddenly, because you're really looking at 2 spots. You're not looking at 3 like you used to. I mean, that's just a great rotation, and I don't know which one's going to end up being the best this year, and that's a great thing. I mean, you would say it could be Junior Colson, and he's one big muscle, as I constantly say. Ernest Hausman really feels like he's maybe the best. Mike Barrett came on so strong late last year. We haven't really heard anything about Jimmy Rolder. We haven't talked about him in any press conferences, and no one's asked, but a listener said that they had heard that he was injured. News to me. I have no idea. He hasn't been mentioned as an injured guy. He hasn't been mentioned as a guy making plays. And Jaden Hood is suddenly, I mean, he's good enough where they gave him to us in media availability yesterday. So that kind of tells you things are on the up and up at the linebacker position. Now it's suddenly an exciting group. And, I mean, Joey Velasquez is still there. I believe, I'm not mistaken about that, right? Yeah, he's still there. There's a lot to like about that linebacking core. So I'm way more excited about it. All right, top 3 coming up here in just a moment. But before we do, listen, football season is about to kick off. I mean, we are, as far as NFL, and NFL is 2 weeks away. College is a couple days away. We're right there, right? And guess what? FanDuel is giving you a chance to win all season long. That's because with FanDuel right now, if you bet on a Super Bowl winner, the Detroit Lions, you can get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. So just pick any team to win the Super Bowl and you'll get bonus bets for every victory. You can use your bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, and a heck of a lot more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. All right, I don't even need to look at my sheet anymore. I know my top 3 by heart. So let's go with number 3. My number 3 position group is the safeties. Because you have 2 incredibly amazing starters, and you're hearing things like Keon Sabbs pushing Makari Page. Zeke Berry you see out there doing some things. Caden Colasar returns. I mean, Rod Moore is just, he should take that next step going into his junior year. This is a group that wasn't really even thought of and probably was down on my list. I wonder if I can find it relatively quickly. I want to see where my list compares, because it's safety is one where I don't have much doubt, right? And while it was while last year we were talking about RJ Moten and stuff like that, this just really feels like this is a group that is just it's got everything going for it. It's got the established talent, it's got the younger talent that's kind of waiting its turn. I mean, we even heard things about like Brandon Hillman being a heavy hitter type thing. So yesterday, so it will be interesting to see how the safeties perform, because this is just a much better group than I think nationally is getting credit, though Rod Moore is spoken of as being a guy who's right there in the mix. All right, I got my spring ball ranking. I'm trying to see if I have last year's ranking. I don't see it, but that doesn't mean it isn't. So what we'll do is we will look at that here in a moment. Well, let's just look at it right now. So spring ball, I had safety at number 3. I had quarterback at number 4. I had tight end just below that. Wide receiver was higher. Defensive line, linebacker. So linebackers really climbed. Cornerback was last. But I don't know where it was from last year. But okay. So again, safeties, I just feel really, I feel really adamant that it's going to be a very solid position group. And yeah, no, I don't know where. I know I did a position group ranking. I just can't find it. Anyway, I digress. I did do a change from number 1 and number 2 from spring to now. So my number 2 position group is running back. And this was something that, like, I was arguing, like a light argument with Chris Ballas when we were in Canada. And I have running back number 2 because, I mean, number 1, we've seen how good they are while injured, right? But we also saw in the the Illinois game, when you don't have Blake Corum and you don't have Donovan Edwards, that you might be in trouble. So you need more than just 2 guys. That said, those maybe are the 2 best running backs in the country, and that's certainly how ESPN sees it. So, but then there's one ball, you have to figure out how to get them all the ball. So, it's a great position group, and don't get me wrong, we don't necessarily know how CJ Stokes, Tavier Dunlap, Benjamin Hall, Cole Cabana, how those guys would fare if they're called upon, right? So that's why they're number 2 compared to what is our number 1, which to me at this moment is clear cut. It's the offensive line, because it is just stacked. Michigan could put out its entire secondary offensive line, whoever it considers to be its secondary, still have a couple guys who would be able to come in as backups. And I wouldn't be surprised if they still won the Joe Moore Award for the 3rd straight year. That's how deep the offensive line is at this moment. I even just trying to put things to paper right now that we know that Carson Barnhart and Ladarius Henderson are battling for left tackle, and Trente Jones and Miles Hinton are battling for right tackle, I'm not 100% sure who's going to start where. I can't tell you for sure. The only 2 that I can say for sure, I would say 3, but is Trevor Keegan, Zach Zinter, but then center, Jim Harbaugh says that could be a platoon situation as well with Drake Nugent and Greg Crippen. So it's an embarrassment of riches. Gio Al-Hadi could come in and start, and he did last year. You didn't really notice a difference. Raheem Anderson, we haven't even talked about him. That's probably a big reason why they moved Reese Adbury to the other side of the ball. It's like, listen, you're going to be able to play a lot quicker on that other side of the ball. It's it's just a much better scenario, right? And like we could go into Jeff Percy, who started for Michigan against Rutgers. I'm sure there's some of those other guys that we're not even talking about, like Connor Jones, who have taken steps forward, right? There's just so much talent on the offensive line. I don't even know where to begin with a lot of it. I'm just going to go back and look at the roster for just a second here and see who I'm missing, because I know I am. Guys like Tristan Bounds could be. I mean, Andrew Gentry. I missed one. Jim Harbaugh's like, I got to figure out a way to get Andrew Gentry on the field because he's that good. Like, we're already talking about the 13th lineman at this point. We're talking at number 13 because they are that deep on the offensive line that they could go into player number 13. I still feel pretty good about it. When you think about where Michigan was in 2017, it is just night and day. I think I've mentioned everyone that I need to mention there. The future's still bright because you got guys like Amir Herring coming up. Evan Link, who's going to be pretty good. It's a very good situation for Michigan to be in, the offensive line. All right, that's going to do it for us today. We'll be back on Wednesday, continuing to talk about preview this team as we come up. Certainly we could talk more Jim Harbaugh and the suspension, all that. I think we've said a lot of what we need to say about that. But anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll be back soon. Peace.